Hi, and welcome to the second hour of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation. Talking in the first hour about the trial for the Fort Hood shooter. Major Hassan getting his free helicopter rides, his $300,000 in pay, special accommodations, special living quarters that he's got. He gets to wear a beard against military regulations, even though he is still in the military, still drawing a military salary, gets to wear a beard. Nobody else does. And meanwhile, his victims aren't eligible for any kind of combat pay. They're not eligible for the kind of medical resources that go to victims in combat. They're not eligible for any combat medals, even though he calls himself a soldier of Allah, jumped up on the table, shouted Allahu Akbar before he started firing. You got people, you've got victims of him that are out of the military now that they're eating food out of cans to try to get by. He's sitting there collecting $300,000 a day, getting helicopter rides. He's already confessed to doing it. I have no idea why this guy has not been lined up against a wall in front of a firing squad and shot to death. That should have happened. I mean, there's no question he did it. I don't even know what we're fooling around with this kind of a farce of a trial when he has confessed. You don't need to prove somebody guilty who has confessed to the crime. He said, I did it. I'm the shooter. That should be the end of the trial. Guilty is charged. Let's take him out. And capital punishment is obviously the only appropriate penalty in a case like this when you have 14 completely innocent victims that have lost their lives. Well, let's grab a couple of phone calls before we jump into the second hour of content. We're going to talk about this Benghazi business and the closing of all these embassies and all that. But let's begin by going to Jamie in Southern Pines, North Carolina. Welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian.
Hey.
I just want to say I appreciate you for not failing to mention that there were 14 casualties that day. It really, to use a good Southern expression, really gets my goat when I hear everybody, and on AFR also, say there's 13 people were killed. There was not 13 people killed. There was 14 killed. And I recognize the fact that that baby in the womb counts as a life also, and that pregnant mother, that was a devastating what happened to that family of that pregnant woman, because they lost not only a wife but also a child. And he should be, whether or not he's charged for 14 counts of murder or not, we should still not fail to recognize there was 14 casualties that day. And the way that the government has gone about this is disgraceful. And I'm proud to be an American, but there's things like that. It makes me ashamed of my government when things like that can go on and keep happening, and it's like it's just nothing, you know. Workplace violence, that's a far cry from workplace violence, and
Yep, that's definitely an instance of jihad, is war. It was an act of war against American soldiers on an American base. You can't get any more of an act of war than a guy shouting the name of Allah and firing a weapon on American soldiers on an American base. I mean, that is an act of war. That's not a workplace violence. That is an act of war. That is jihad. You know, and it is interesting to go back to what Jamie was saying about the fact that there are 14 victims here, not just 13. He's being tried for 13 counts of murder, but he murdered an unborn baby. So there's 14 victims of homicide here. And the interesting thing to me is I don't have the story in front of me, so this is going to be very close to accurate. It may not be absolutely precise, but the general facts are absolutely correct. That our military, in the case of the Fort Hood shooter, decided not to prosecute him for that 14th victim, even though that 14th victim, that unborn baby, was being carried by an American citizen, by a member of the American military, did not charge him with homicide for that 14th victim. But there was a GI, there was a soldier that went nonlinear in Afghanistan. You remember this story, went on a rampage middle of the night, and he killed 16 Afghanis in their homes, one of whom was pregnant. And our military charged him with 17 counts of homicide. They counted the unborn baby in the Afghani woman, but they would not count the unborn baby in the womb of an American citizen and an American soldier in the Fort Hood deal. So they're perfectly willing, when it suits their political purposes, they're willing to identify the unborn baby as a victim of homicide and charge the shooter for the crime. Let's go to Jimmy, Jimmy in Fort Hood, Texas. Jimmy, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hello?
Yes, Jimmy, go right ahead. You're on with Brian Fisher.
Thanks, Brian, for everything that you're doing for
You
the
bet.
body of Christ.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm retired.
Did we lose Jimmy? Yeah, we're having, ladies and gentlemen, we're having some severe weather right now here, right over our studio. On that, we've lost the last two calls. Have just gotten dropped because of severe weather. So I just want to make you aware of that. These thunderstorms are very intense. They last for a brief duration, and then they pass. So we're hoping that severe weather will clear, and we'll be able to continue to take phone calls. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for that to clear, a couple of other things that we can say about the situation. In fact, there's an interesting story. I'm looking at two stories, as sort of companion pieces that I think are very interesting, and they both sort of point in the same direction. And I'll just kind of trot this out for you, and maybe you can respond to this. I've got two pieces here, one of which written by a guy named Bill Gertz, who on the Washington Free Beacon. Bill Gertz is top rate when it comes to Islam, the threat of Islam, national security. He knows what he's talking about. This guy's a credible observer on this issue. Another one by Angelo Codevilla on the libertylawsite.org. Now, what Angela Codevilla says is, look, there's something wrong with this picture. There's something wrong with this picture. What could be going on here is Al-Qaeda is just messing with us. They are just toying with us. They are manipulating us, and they're laughing at us behind their backs. Because remember, what we were told is that these threats were real, and they were serious, and they were specific. Remember that? Now, again, I'm not saying that wasn't true. I'm just trotting this out. I'm just reporting to you what Angelo Codevilla, and this guy's a smart guy. This is a guy that wrote the seminal column on the difference between ruling class Republicans and citizen class. He called them country class. I call them citizen class. We're citizen class Republicans. And you got the ruling class Republicans, the Karl Roves, that really don't want to go to war for conservative values whatsoever. But what Angelo Codevilla says is, if essentially what he says, look, as if the threat was as specific as we were told, then how come we're closing down 22 embassies? You're telling us this is specific. You're telling this is credible. This is imminent. If it's specific, that means we've got some idea where they're going to strike. We're not going to close every embassy in the Middle East if the information is specific. And so his point is, look, Al-Qaeda, they know that the NSA is listening to them. They know that. So he's suggesting all of this increased chatter is just Al-Qaeda messing with us, messing with our heads. They know that the NSA is listening. They've read the news accounts about how much attention NSA surveillance has gotten. So they know that everybody in the world knows that NSA is listening. So they increase the chatter just to get us all wigged out and freaked out, and it's been working. Back in two.
Here's Twyla Brace, president of CCHF, with today's Health Freedom Minute.